No, we had some huge major snafu today, and all the flights got canceled. So we had to
With the airline?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's what happened to me. I got this. That's why I had to spend the night in Atlanta because there's some huge airline thing. I got halfway through my segment to Atlanta, and then they gave my ticket away. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Good. Everybody good?
What's that?
Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a Town of Superior Board of Trustees meeting for July 9th, 2012. And Phyllis, if you call the roll.
Mayor Andrew Muffle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Evie Gregoris. Trustees Joe Stradoli, Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Bennington.
Here.
Lisa Schoolmans, Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Renee.
Here.
Town Attorney Jeff Parker.
Here.
Town Clerk Holster.
Great, thanks. That brings us to item number 3, approval of the agenda. And just from, I've been notified by staff that 7D, second quarter contingency grants will follow the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor.
Who's
Any other-
pulling that?
Staff.
Staff is pulling.
Staff it.
I'm doing it, but
Oh,
I'm doing it for them.
that's a first.
Yeah.
So, any other changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with that change by Trustee Williams, second by Trustee Hansen. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Williams, you wanted to start?
Sure. I attended a meeting for the town center community open house PD, planned development. And it was a good turnout, and it was a very good presentation as well. So there's more coming, so hope everyone can make some of the other open houses. I think there's one in August. It's on our website. I also attended a meeting with the Louisville Council, City Council, on our diverging diamond interchange at US 36 in McCaslin. And it was a good meeting. It was very productive, and basically we talked about design aspects, and pretty much the entire meeting was in the paper, so you can read it in the Daily Camera, a little synopsis. It's exactly what happened. And there was a comprehensive plan joint meeting with the town board and the plan commission. And we kind of worked through some of the undeveloped parcels in our town as far as how we want to see those developed or not developed, and kind of overall transportation planning for our town and other issues for the comp plan. I attended the 4th of July parade and flipped some pancakes for a while. And it was a great parade. Apparently, we had record numbers this year, as I understand. So that was a very fun experience. A lot more fun than just going down to the lake by yourself with your family. It was just, I had my whole family in the parade with me. That was not an option. They had to join. And we do it every year, so it's very fun. I also attended a Dr. Cog meeting, which is Denver Regional Council of Governments, for the whole Denver metro area. And I'll just give you a quick synopsis. It's usually a very dry meeting, but there were 2 things that were kind of important to note with the Fast Tracks TIP funding. What they call TIP is Transportation Improvement Projects. And every 5 years, they do a call for new projects in the whole area. And anything that's kind of close to shovel-ready, not exactly shovel-ready, but something to that. They were asking Dr. Cog, all the municipal members, to approve a policy, a new policy, in how we give out that funding. And so part of that was, and I'm sorry here, I need some glasses. Oh, great. I just closed the whole thing. Bear with me for a second.
You want to use more?
Don't you just love technology here? When you hit the wrong button, bam, it's gone. Okay, so that policy basically was asking that it be, let's see here, let me read that. The projects are to be both ultimately supportive of fast tracks, which is mostly the rail. There's one corridor, there may be two corridors. One corridor that I know of that's BRT, which is bus rapid transit. But they want it to be supportive of fast tracks and independently useful for the corridor until that particular segment is open for fast tracks. In other words, it's so delayed, fast tracks will be so delayed, that they don't want to hold up any projects that want to move forward that could help that corridor in the rail or whatever, that particular corridor's main focus is. Ours is BRT. Anyway, so that was important, that they needed to pass that and make sure that anyone who could get that funding could get it now and not wait till 2024 before the corridor is actually implemented for fast tracks. And then the other thing was a waiver, which was a little of a snafu. People were very worried. This is a waiver of the annual review for fast tracks. And every year, DRCOG has to approve Fast Track's financial plan. And this year, they were saying that they were going to waive it. And it did not say that it was going to be just for 1 year. It said it was waiving the annual review. And so most people said, there's no way we're waiving that. We're going to hold Fast Tracks accountable financially in how they're managing the project. So we had to amend that and make sure that it was just for 1 year. And the reason why it's for 1 year is that Fast Tracks, or RTD, decided they weren't going to pursue a new sales tax. They figured that the voters wouldn't pass that in order to get more funding for their fast tracks, all the different corridors. So they're going to wait on that. And so that basically put the fast tracks annual financial review out of whack. So anyway, those were two important things for the Denver Regional Council of Governments.
Can I ask about that? So
Sure.
my understanding from RTD last time I spoke with them that they were going to send the fast tracks review without, because in years past they always included the sales tax that they thought would be generated from a successful election. And my understanding is that they were going to do that analysis and take out the revenue from any election and run that through the DRCOG process. Is that
So
your understanding? Or?
that was my understanding, but there's no way that they can make the deadline. So they're going to have to waive that annual review time.
Okay.
And then take 6 months, or I don't know how long, before they're able to do another one.
Okay.
So that was very important. Otherwise, the Denver Regional Council of Governments would be financially unconstrained, which it should be constrained. And so then that would mean that the federal government would not give the funds to DRCOG in order to give to everyone that is submitting projects, if that makes sense. Also, I attended a while back, I wasn't here to talk about that, but CML is Colorado Municipal League that's throughout all of Colorado, brings all the different municipalities together on an annual conference. And I won't report on that in detail, but I will prepare something that we can look at for another meeting, or we can do it as a retreat or anything. I don't know. Did you, Chris, do anything? You didn't report on each thing that you went to?
No. Just
Okay.
a quick overview.
Okay. I will conclude then.
Okay, great. Trustee Hanson.
I attended most of the same meetings as Trustee Williams, except the exciting Dr. Cog meeting. But I have to say that the the 4th of July parade and pancake breakfast was phenomenal, and staff did a great job. The turnout was huge, number of floats and residents, and it just went very smooth. So thank you, Matt. Good job of your staff. The Superior Youth Rugby Club just finished their season and did very well. We had 2 teams that went to undefeated in the season, and then our U9 team actually took second in the state. So very proud of these kids, 5 years old up through 13 years old playing rugby. Did super, and we're looking forward to next year. So that's it.
Great. Trustee Pennington.
Went to most of those same meetings as well. Deb, on the fast tracks thing, the first thing you reported on, how did you interpret that as a potential benefit or disadvantage to us? Did any come to mind? That you feel free to comment
You're
on?
talking about the tip, right?
Right.
Not the annual review. Okay. I thought basically what I voted for is what the majority voted for, which is to allow the funding for each corridor now
Correct.
for any project that you might want to submit. So I considered that for us an advantage, and every corridor felt the same way.
Right.
What I think is the caveat would be whether it's should be rail or supporting rail, or whether it's BRT, the project supports any of one of those things. The reason why I'm saying all this is in our interchange, we are actually, the cost for the interchange, if we do this diverging diamond interchange, and we add $5 million so that RTD can route their buses without having to go through the interchange. They basically get off on the side and get back right on. It costs an extra $5 million. And that is an improvement for our corridor that is included in Fast Tracks, because Fast Tracks for our corridor is BRT and some commuter rail if we ever get that. And the BRT component, that would support that project. So it would be nice to have funding from Denver Regional Council of Governments so that they could kick in some money for that. But it's a question of whether the other corridors or every partner in our corridor consider that Fast Tracks or rail, if it's commuter rail. So that,
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, I saw some potential
more than
benefit.
you wanted to know?
No, it's validation. Okay, great. I wanted to report that Derek Aiello, the Eagle Scout, finished his project on the Superior Town film of Superior Town history, debuted at the pancake breakfast. Did you guys have an opportunity to view it?
I did, yeah.
We had sort of a inaugural viewing last Friday with the Historical Commission. We were all quite pleased. I mean, producing a film is quite an endeavor when you're 15, so hoping to see him on the Oscars sometime. But the question, Matt, was can we loop that on Channel 8?
Yeah.
His DVD was problematic, but he promised me he'd get you one, so I'll make sure he does that. There has been some conversation recently with the Flagstaff fire that perhaps, I know, Matt, you gave a pretty thorough explanation at the last town board meeting, but to put that all on the website and in the newsletter, and as well to provide a link between Boulder Sheriff's departments for ease of access to sign up for the text
some
messaging.
information on the website,
Okay.
but I'll see what's
Yeah,
up there.
if we can just finish that out, because it got a little close for comfort last week. The other ramification of the Flagstaff fire is there's been some discussion of, particularly among homes that front open space, whether or not what's that, fire break is called officially, whether or not there is one and whether or not it's deep enough to keep a fire at bay if, in fact, a grassland fire starts with lightning.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're
Yeah,
prepared.
Typically, what we've done in the past is our contractor has mowed those areas near the fences down. I forget how many feet wide a path they make, but that's one thing that they do. And I'll see if they're
Yeah.
doing that again this year or not. But-
Yeah, if you, I know I caught you off guard, if you would just maybe, I don't know if CoCal assesses that or your staff assesses that
Yeah,
or
we are
whatnot.
parks staff.
But if it's assessed and deemed safe, that would be nice. And that's all.
Great. I had one question, and I see Alex here. Maybe you could give us an update about how the street construction program is going? Would that be fair?
Yeah, Alex just walked in. Why don't you come on up, Alex?
I thought we were going to have some other people. Okay, well, we started getting to work, I think, on June 18th. Had some rough going with Rand to begin with, but we got last week we got the first lift paving done on Rand and on Cedar Ridge. We ran into some problems on Graydon where we ran into some subgrade issues with saturated subgrade where the park, we had
Circle
overflow
Park.
irrigation that comes down at the end of Graydon, the north end of Graydon. And so we had some delays getting Graydon back up because we needed to figure out a solution, which we ended up putting in a under drain along the entire east side of Graydon, and that'll be about a $30,000 issue. But we've been underrunning a lot of the other quantities in terms of the bow magging and the milling and so forth. We're really pleased with the results we're getting in terms of we're getting the subgrade stabilized. Rand came out very good, and so did Cedar Edge. Graydon, we had to put the under drain in, so we'll see what happens on that. On Dillon, we started on Dillon last week, and that came out that went really smoothly. So we're getting the process down. So Dillon went real smooth, and we're at a point where we're ready to pave on Dillon. We had a setback this weekend with the rain. Had some downpours, and as you saw this morning, as of 10:30, it was pouring rain. So we had to shut things down today, and hopefully it dries out. We were scheduled to pave Graydon and Dillon and the section of El Dorado where we've torn up El Dorado now from Coal Creek Drive up to Elm. So that's a key stretch, as you know, that a lot of people use that. So we've more or less shut that down for through traffic and just allow local access. So hopefully if things dry out, we'll see. We're meeting tomorrow to see what the schedule is, and we may end up paving Saturday if the contractor's willing to catch up and pave. We need two days of paving this week, so it may be Friday and Saturday, or may push into next week. I know the residents of Graydon have been very concerned. They've been the hardest hit. They've been down almost 3 weeks. They've had a lot of issues getting access to their properties. We've had the issues with the under drain. So I know, I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but I know they're really concerned about what's going on, and they were concerned today about fire access because we had just milled it on Friday, so we hadn't graded or compacted, so it was really kind of a loose surface. It wasn't very drivable. We recommended they would drive, and people could drive if they wanted to, but with when the rain hit, now it's a muddy mess. So they're concerned about fire, emergency access, getting into their properties. The fire marshal and deputy chief went out there today and assessed the situation and asked for a stockpile to be moved. And other than that, I think they're okay with the situation. Of course, they don't want to see it like this for too much longer. So that's the situation. I think there are other residents from Graydon that might be here tonight, so you may hear from them.
Okay. Yeah, Trustee Hanson.
So that project is behind schedule, then I'm assuming? That portion is behind schedule?
Graydon is.
And then
the other two, we're about a week behind. I think there was some startup issues with the contractor getting going and getting the procedures underway. But I think at least last week we had good progress. We paved 2 roads, and the other ones that we worked on, they went fairly smoothly. So I was pleased with the progress we had last week. But then we had the rain, so we had a little setback.
Okay, and then so I heard you say that you anticipated being done this weekend, that portion, to be paved?
I have to, we're going to have to assess things tomorrow, whether, it's dried out enough that we can continue our operations. We were scheduled to pave Thursday and Friday this week. And if we have 2 days setback, it may push us into next week.
Okay.
But if there's only 1 day setback, then maybe we can still get it done. And I guess I'd like to hear the board's feedback on paving on Saturdays and whether that's okay or not.
Yeah, my suggestion to him was to go ahead with Saturday and pay.
So we'll find out from the contractor. And we've tried to be in close contact with the residents. We have emails, and we have an intern that's trying to run interference and make sure they're informed. But I know the residents feel that things are changing on a daily basis, and they are, and they never know when they can get back to their property. And the signage hasn't been the greatest, and we're going to get on the contractor tomorrow because really the no parking signs and the detour signs haven't been the greatest, and so we're going to crack down on them tomorrow about those types of issues.
So I know you have one more question, but from my perspective, if we could get 1 lift of asphalt down at least as soon as possible, just so that we don't run into this, if there's more rain, that we then delay it another week or whatever. So if there's opportunity there to do some customer service and trying to get the street back online, at least to some degree, I think that would make sense.
And quite frankly, I'm disappointed that we don't have I thought we'd only be shut down 1 or 2 days for a particular street, and it's taken longer for that. And so I'm going to try to get better answers tomorrow from the contractor why I can't speed up the process. Because, I think a week, 2 weeks is really asking a lot of the residents.
Yeah.
Sorry. The saturated subgrade, is it possible that could be an issue elsewhere in the project as well? That maybe we can anticipate?
The approach we had, we knew we had subgrade issues all over. And the approaches we had when we encountered them, if there were small areas, we would dig them out, and we're using cobble concrete, broken up concrete, and we put that down first, and that really has taken care of most of the problems that we've encountered. We haven't had to use fly ash, we haven't had to use other techniques, but on Graydon, we had so much water coming off that park. It's a big issue, and we actually debated whether we wanted to put a storm sewer, but that might have been another $250,000 to put a storm sewer. So we decided to put this under drain system in, which may only last for a few years, but there is another opportunity maybe to get a storm sewer down a greenbelt area at the end of Circle Park to get it connected to El Dorado. So there is a big issue there in terms of the water coming off of Circle Park. It all ends up at the end of Braden, and we're going to put an under drain, and that'll take care of it for a few years, but it may plug up, and under drains are not as good as storm sewers are. And we felt that a storm sewer would be such a big cost and delay the project so much that we decided not to go that route. That there's an opportunity to come back and do another project down the road to solve that problem. The other, on Rand, we had an under drain there that we replaced, but we felt actually with the process we had, we would have taken care of the subgrade issues, because the engineers are real pleased with how the millings are being compacted into the subgrade and providing a much better base than we ever had before. So that the engineers are quite pleased with the results that we're getting right now. So we know there's other subgrade issues, and we have kind of a step approach for each one. Concrete cobble first, under drain second, and potential storm sewers third. And that storm sewer issue will come back and with the board, because that'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't want to get to that situation yet.
Great. I'm sorry, Trustee Pennington.
We have a short-term problem here that needs to be resolved, but we also have a long-term management issue here. It's clear that we're sitting on these changing animal type of roads. And I'm wondering whether or not we are documenting the problems, where they occur, what the best resolution was to a particular problem, and actually creating sort of our own long-term best practices. Because we know we've had changeover in public works directors, et cetera, and I'm wondering if we as a town are creating this long-term working document so we know what worked, when it worked, what didn't work, et cetera, because it's not only frustrating to residents, it's, I think, frustrating to town management and everybody. So do we do that? How do we track all this?
I've gone back and tried to get all the information I have from past practices and to see, if we've done stuff in the past and it's failed, why did it fail, and like the problem you identified in Indiana there, we've gone back to the old photos, or what's really happening here, where's that water coming from, can we trace it down, and rather than just patching it, what's causing this problem and figuring out a solution for it. So we have, good documentation from previous years, photos and construction. So
are we creating a master document? Or is this in separate project files that you have to go back and track through? I'm trying to encourage the creation, if possible, of a master document that obviously we're the masters of our own fate here. We can't leave it in the hands of our contractors because they're contractors, et cetera. So I believe we as a town should investigate the creation of this best practices approach where we create our own documents.
Sure. And if you've seen some of the things I've done with the CIP, I've tried to investigate when were the roads built, when was the last time things were done, what was done, and I'm creating that database and those files and so forth, that database. And a lot of it's there. And we've taken our pavement management, we've done inspections and pavement management. We've done that several times, so I'll be using that as well. What's happened over time to these various roads. It's been hard to do all that in 4 months.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And as I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, the past methods of just mill and overlay has not actually solved a lot of the issues with...
It was patch and overlay.
It was patch and overlay. Okay.
Patch and overlay.
Wrong word. But in other words, the process you're using now, you believe is a better process in making the road more stable.
We still have issues with drainage. If you drive around some of our roads, you look at the curb and gutter, and we have a lot of those areas, and how far do you go with that? I mean, we're correcting some of those, but a lot of these areas don't drain very well, and the curb and gutter is now warped because of the subgrade failures on the curb and gutter, so they're not draining very well. I don't have good answers for those. We're trying to fix as many of the drainage issues that we encounter, and I think with this milling operation that we're correcting some of the subgrades, we're building a better base to put the paving on. So we need to, again, monitor that. Did this process work? The engineers are real pleased so far from what they've seen, and the same engineers were on the project last year.
So
and I feel that it's worked out much better this year because we're not just patching one little area. We're correcting the whole subgrade of the whole street. And if we find a subgrade issue, we can fix it in a more comprehensive fashion than we were able to do last year.
So that was the extra question. To what extent do you have the opportunity for conversations with our neighboring communities who have the same soil structure about what works best for them? Is there ever a little mini conference of...
Yeah, I haven't had the opportunity. I do have people that we will be talking to, and including the former Public Works Director who has had some experience here. If you're driving over in Broomfield, you've seen some of the roads over there, so they're experiencing the same types of issues we are. And so I'm looking for the best practices that we can find to correct the situation. And this is one we hadn't really tried, the milling operation, and at least we're having some initial success with it. Long term, it's it's going to take some time to see what happens.
Trustee Williams?
And I hope we can hear from the residents that might be here, their perspective.
Sounds good.
Public comment?
And then
Thanks, Alex.
Yes, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you.
Then I think everybody has a letter as a response from the letter we sent to Broomfield. Do you have that? So maybe, I don't know if you want to speak to that now. Obviously, we sent them a letter saying that, if you have concerns or questions, we'd be happy to discuss this further with you vis-a-vis the Jefferson Parkway.
Yeah, Mayor Quinn responded saying he'd be happy to meet with the board to discuss contamination concerns that the board may have and what their data shows. And so we would just set that up for a future work session at some point.
Would that be the entire board?
If the board's interested.
And who would we be meeting with?
So we have to clarify that. I'm assuming Mayor Quinn will be here, and then I don't know who else he might bring with him.
I mean, does that include the entire JPPHA authority and
We could
everyone
ask
on that board?
The letter came from him, and I think that he said the person that was on their Rocky Flats Stewardship Council would be
Right.
attending and a staff person. So it didn't sound like Arvada or Jefferson County would be
So are they representing the Jefferson Parkway, or are they representing Broomfield?
there. I think they're representing Broomfield.
That's a very different meeting then.
Trustee Bennington?
But they're representing the city and county of Broomfield. But underneath that, they represent JPPH.
That's right. And I don't think, well, we're not going to hear anything different than what we have heard in the past from the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, the Jefferson Parkway Authority, and Broomfield. So
I suspect that that's true.
Or the thousands and thousands of pages on the internet and documents that we have received and read through for the last 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I'm not sure if there's something different than what we've already read, absolutely would love to see it,
Trustee
if it's the
Bennington?
same.
I apologize, but I did not see that letter. If you sent it, I didn't see it.
Your mail that was sent out on Thursday.
Oh, that physical mail? Okay, thank you. But I'm with the other two trustees. I don't believe any evidence that another municipality presents to us is what I'm looking for. I actually want the federal records produced as to the official federal studies, and I want it under the authority of the federal government. That's what I need. So to meet with the municipalities who's interpreting those documents or other documents, et cetera, to me is fruitless. I don't want to put Broomfield through the work, nor do I want to give them the impression that it would make any substantial difference with me.
Okay, so I guess we'll poll the rest of the board and just see. I mean, it's a letter we signed, so poll the rest of the board, see if they're interested in a meeting. From my perspective, there's never a downside of meeting with people, even if you're going to end up not agreeing with what they're presenting. So I think there might be some upside.
Yeah, my concern is giving misimpressions that it would possibly make a difference. And I just want to be honest up front that that's not what I'm looking for in terms of presentation of official government data on what studies have been done and haven't been done.
And to finish that sentence, what has been done on the former Rocky Flats nuclear weapons site?
Right.
It would be good to understand what is on that property and what what kind of use can be done on that property? Can we really build a highway on that property without, contaminating anybody
So
nearby?
I mean, I think that we have a couple of issues, and the plutonium issue is obviously front and center. There's obviously been a lot of data that's been done in terms of analysis of what's been leaked there and what's on this site, but I don't think there's ever been an analysis of whether or not it's safe to build a road through there. So
I would agree.
I would think that would continue to be our position. So.
If there are, however, other issues, I think it's beneficial meeting with Louisville on cross collaborations, that kind of thing. I'm totally open to meeting with any community where we can collaborate. I just simply do not want to give the misimpression here that we're looking or can be influenced by another metropolitan area's data.
And they're probably going to present some data, but once again, I don't think that would influence our position. So I guess I'd keep an open mind about it, and we'll poll the board and see whether or not there's a majority interest or not. So,
And can I make one more
yes,
comment?
Trustee Williams.
If we were meeting with the Jefferson Parkway Authority and not just a municipality that is part of the authority, then I would reconsider in terms of just discussing. But working with just one entity out of three that make up for the whole Jefferson Parkway seems to me a waste.
So
I mean,
that's
it's nice to meet them and say, hello, how are you? But that's not where we're here.
That's an easy ask then, so we can try to coordinate that through. If there's, once again, I don't want to go through this exercise and then not have interest of meeting with them, but it's, I think, an easy ask through the Broomfield staff to set up something with the Jefferson Parkway Highway Authority.
I would be less likely to want to meet with them, but I think it would be good to meet with Broomfield just board to board like we've done with Louisville, and maybe we talk about that issue a little bit. Let's talk about other things. We're neighbors and how we can collaborate together.
Right.
So I'd like to do that. That would be good.
But not about the Jefferson Parkway.
Well, I think it's going to come up, and I think it should be, we should maybe talk face to face on what our views are on it. But other than that, we should talk to them about other things that we can work on together.
But their purpose of the meeting is for the Jefferson Parkway. So we would have to make it clear that that is not why we are meeting. That's just
So
my
just to
thoughts.
wrap this up, obviously I don't have, I think, firm direction about how to proceed right now, so we will talk some more maybe offline about this if people have some more thoughts about it.
Right, just because I have the opportunity here, I know where Deborah's going, but again, what the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority has to say about this is not what I'm looking for. We've been to their meetings. We've tried to have discussions simply, on other issues, but I'm looking for the federal data that would stand up in court as official legal data, and that is nothing JPPHA can supply either, so I'm not inclined to want to meet with them on this particular issue. However, if there are other issues that affect us, of course.
Or if they're interested in rerouting the Jefferson Parkway, I would be very, very up for that discussion.
That would be something that could come up at that meeting. I don't know whether or not they'd be willing to reroute it, but those are always helpful discussions.
You never know.
So can I just ask then a favor of the board, since I don't think I know exactly where we're going, is that at the next meeting have a firm idea of who and when or if you want to meet with one or all of the members of the JPPHA?
I'm firm tonight, so I think
Okay.
you know where I
Yes.
stand.
Very good. Let's see, then, I had a couple of meetings, and I'll just put this as a kind of a general overview. They're mostly meeting with HPTE, which is a high-performance tolling enterprise, which is running the Phase 2 of the US 36 project, which will start at the, basically, Broomfield or 88th, and then we'll proceed into Boulder in terms of building the managed lanes. Some good news is that related to that is our interchange funding issue. RTD came to one of these meetings, and they said that they had at least a few $1 million that could be added right away to our interchange construction project, and they felt like they probably could come up with $5 million and cover the entire expense of the bus underpass in that area for our diverging diamond. There might be a cash flow issue in terms of when those funds would come online. Some of them would be immediate, since they're anticipating constructing Q jumps at Church Ranch and here at McCaslin. Q jump wouldn't make any sense if we build the diverging diamond because the bus wouldn't go through the interchange, and they were programmed, I think, $1.5 million for that, and had probably an extra $2 million around what they planned for. So we're getting close to the level that RTD component could be covered.
So that actually covers that DRCOG funding that I talked about earlier,
It's
for
probably
each
not-
corridor.
Yeah, it's probably not coming out of DRCOG.
No.
It's actually probably coming straight
I see that.
out of RTD's, the $82 million that they have programmed for the US 36 corridor. So.
And I assume that we would not be sending our projects, or this project, to corridor funding for fast tracks, but would we actually submit a project during the next call for projects for the DRCOG?
It depends on how you want to proceed. If we want to go through the DRCOG process, then the interchange probably would not fall within Phase 2 because the timeline wouldn't work. But if we get the $5 million from Fast Tracks, then we get down to just the bridge work that would be funded locally.
So can we get money from DRCOG after we've already gone through the whole Phase 2 and funding our end, their end, and RTD? Can you backfill, in other words?
It'd be a good question for DRCOG, but my impression is that you can't do that. It has to be
Cannot.
It has to be programmed up front.
And we're exploring that with Dr. Cobb, at least asking the question, so.
Because those are federal funds
Yeah.
that we have every right to.
Yep.
Even if it's not today, it's maybe 2015 or 2014 or 16.
RTD's only concern was whether or not Louisville and Superior were really interested in pursuing the diverging diamond. And I tried to be as strong as possible today at one of these meetings to say, yeah, we're on board, because otherwise they weren't going to program this at all. So my impression, once again, is that we'll probably get to $5 million from RTD, the timing of which is not completely clear, but a significant fraction will be up front. During one of these meetings, also getting maybe into the weeds here, but part of the funding for the managed lane, additional $15 million was coming from RTD for their transit component of that. We've been concerned that this isn't a real number and that they won't really program that, but today they said they had the cash, and when it came forward, they have the full $15 million that they could put into the project. So that was also positive news.
Andrew, which managed lane are we talking about here?
The one basically from Denver that would end up in Table Mesa.
Okay.
So the completion of the 30, they're starting Phase 1, which is
Right.
I think the managed lane ends at Pecos right now, and so it will continue all the way to Table Mesa. Phase 1 will go through 88th or
Right.
that.
Up to?
Right, and this Phase 2 is going to be run through a concessionaire, so this will be a public-private partnership with yet to be determined.
And when is
construction
it
company.
expected to reach Table Mesa?
2015, I think, if I remember that number correctly. So much sooner than I think anybody anticipated, and it's probably because it's going to be run through this private contractor with reimbursement through tolling. And then there's a slight controversy right now about the number of people that would qualify for high occupancy vehicles, which would be free in the managed lane. Currently, right now, it's 2 people could ride free. I think will be a big push either from the concessionaire and or HPTE to move to HOV3 and do that statewide. The upside for that, there's some downside, so that some people that would otherwise ride in a 2 occupancy vehicle would no longer be able to ride free. The upside is that probably would allow that lane to have free flow for transit in terms of the buses, and there's some increased revenue which might be able to either improve transit along the corridor or pay back things sooner. So, but that's a discussion that's being held right now, but they want an answer from the corridor by the end of this month.
Has there been any discussion at all about electric vehicles going in those two? I heard that in some states they allow electric vehicles to run in.
In the HOV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been completely clarified, but there is language in there that HOV3 or HOV2 plus what other eligible vehicle would ride free, and I suspect an electric vehicle would qualify.
How would they determine that when you're riding it?
There's a whole bunch of technology issues, truth be told, so you have to figure out if there's only a single occupancy vehicle in there, or if it's you're in an
Electric
HOV or electric. Probably it would come through a transponder of some form that you would go through the gantry, but that's just my speculation.
So have you seen any studies as to what impact on congestion moving from 2 to 3 is? Because 2 sends a considerable number of cars into HOV, and those cars would remain in the general use lanes. I'm assuming somewhere is doing congestion studies.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that'll be, I think KPMG is actually doing that study
Okay.
right now in terms of their financial analysis.
Oh. Well, I'd be interested in seeing that if you ever come across it.
Yeah, and some of this is held close to the vest with HPTE, so I haven't seen it either, but they have said when they get to farther along in the study, they'd be able to share that with us. I think that's all I had. So, Town Manager.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll try to be brief. I just wanted to echo the board's comments and thank Martin and his staff, along with Heather Craigcraft, for their work on the July 4th event. They always do a great job. Got a group of kids from Kentucky that are helping us with some trail construction this month, and Martin and his staff in Parks are coordinating their efforts. So you see them out on Colton Road doing that work. Groundbreaking ceremony for the US 36 Phase 1 project is scheduled for Monday, July 23rd at 2:30 at the First Bank Center. There's invitation in your mailboxes for that event.
I'll be there.
Let's see. Children's Park, we're making some drainage improvements there to get from the south alley over to the north alley inlet. So actually, I think that work has been completed. Our next joint town board planning commission town center plan development meeting is this coming Monday, the 16th at 6:30. If you don't have that on your calendars. We've scheduled a work session concept plan with Ryland Homes, who is the company that is considering purchasing the property at Colton and McCaslin from Richmond Homes. So they have a concept plan that they would like to show the board as far as the product that they would end up building if allowed, and the site plan and how that looks. So
When is that?
July 23rd.
On a regular town
Work
board
session,
meeting?
yeah.
Okay.
And then Remington Homes for the property over here in Original Town, their final development plan is scheduled for a special meeting of the Planning Commission on July 31st. And then it'll be, depending on the Planning Commission's review, it will be scheduled for the town board for final consideration. I received a request from the city manager in Louisville with regard to the underpass over here off of Marshall Road that we discussed with them last Monday, that they want included in the US 36 Phase 2 improvements. Their request now is they would fund half of it. They would seek funding from Boulder County for 25%, and they're looking for the town of Superior to fund 25% of that new underpass to be paid out over 2 years. So it's roughly $81,000 in 13 and $81,000 in 14 from town of Superior if we decide that we want to participate in that project. So need to give some feedback to Louisville, so if you don't have to do it tonight, but if you want to let me know your feelings towards it, so I can let them know. And if you have any questions on it.
So I have a comment, which would, well, I have actually a few comments regarding this. So this underpass obviously doesn't connect with the town of Superior. So, you know, we have to decide whether or not we're going to start doing things outside our town boundary. For just as an informational piece, so they're anticipating, or their desire is to build an underpass through their what they call their lateral, which is basically where Marshall Road bends going into Boulder, and then they'd like to go underneath the highway there for a trail connection over to Davidson Mesa, with a construction price of $650K or something like that, if I remember the number.
And it's just west of Costco, right?
It's not just west, but because you.
West of the CDOT facility.
It's west of CDOT. It's
Yeah.
What, half a mile or
Just a little bit. Where it
quarter of a mile?
I don't think it's-
Just to
Sounds
give
like-
some
sounds like a
perspective
reason.
here.
Yeah, it's not like multiple miles, but you know, half quarter mile might be a reasonable number.
Yeah, it was up by the bend. Someone's mentioned
It's right at the bend.
Right at the bend, yeah.
So, but that's not in the town. So,
Andrew, to comment on that, when do we have to give them an answer?
Well, it's already included. It's included in the RFP that not CDOT, but
HPTE.
HPTE is going to release for
Tomorrow.
phase 2 tomorrow. Yeah. But CDOT would like this letter from Louisville and whoever else is going to participate in it, saying yes, we're committed to it. But it is in the RFP, so.
Does this project make sense to go to ProStack and let them?
So that would be my recommendation before we did anything, that run this through OSAC and through
OSAC.
ProStack.
Okay.
Probably both for their
Yeah.
comments, whether or not that makes sense.
Especially if it's going to be a trail connection.
Right. So that would be my
non-superior land,
right.
yeah.
So that would be my first recommendation. My second one is that I think it would be a good connection potentially for the US 36 bike path, of which $10 million is programmed through Fast Tracks. And it might make sense to be able to coordinate with that bikeway and have it come underneath there and potentially then connect to the Superior Park and Ride area. So the manager will receive feedback from the rest of the board, but that would be one of my interests.
And basically, it would connect an incredibly long loop for bikeway, without, I think, pretty much without going on any roads. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you know how many miles that would create a loop?
I do.
Certainly more than 25, right?
A lot.
Well, if you get underneath the highway there, and so there's multiple different paths, but you could potentially get out to Lafayette and Monica Lake and those areas. So, and then you would then be able to access the trails here, and then go to Boulder essentially, because they'll be building something underneath 93.
Never hitting a road.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, so that's 30, 40, 50 miles. So
Right.
that is a benefit.
So there is a benefit there, but there is this other transportation corridor for the bike path along, basically going from Boulder to Denver, of which some of this will run through Superior land. So if it makes sense, I guess I would see whether or not we can make that work through the town in that area. Trustee Pennington.
So when we discuss this at the next, the board meeting, we discuss it, if the manager could ask for a copy of that graphic, that poster board, that to me was very helpful to see at that meeting,
Sure.
to see how it all connects. I'm sure they'll give us one. I like the mayor's suggestion that if in fact any of our money goes to it, that we then have the benefit on Superior land of Superior connections. It seemed to me a little bit of a leapfrog to go, since it's on BOCO land. I'd like the option, has Boulder County been approached to pay 50%? Louisville's willing to pay 50%. Has BOCO been approached? And why are we leapfrogging over that step and going to 50, 25, and 25?
I believe they've had some contact with Boulder County, has indicated that they don't have funds currently for the project. But I don't know to the extent of the conversations that they've had with them.
Would it be advisable for you to contact your sources at Boulder County and have an independent discussion
Sure.
about that? I'd like to see that. But certainly if we're going to even consider throwing in 25%, I think there are some just logical connections that would be beneficial to our community. So I'd like to see those investigated. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Anything else from the manager?
Nope.
Town attorney?
Nope.
You've changed appearance since last time you were here.
I've changed appearance.
Ken Garrett?
Oh.
Not here, so thank you for filling in.
The hair's a little shorter.
Yeah.
From the town clerk? All right, thanks. That brings us to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. Anybody?
Oh, yeah. My name's Tom Ricker, 2047 Graydon Court. I'm here representing some public opinion on Graydon Court on the upper half of the street. Really concerned about what's been going on. To clear one statement earlier by Alex, we're on the 4th week, not the 3rd week. This escapade's been going on. It's a big mess. If you haven't looked at it, you need to take a look. You wouldn't want to have this in your front yard. There's no way a fire truck is going up that street. The garbage collection is not happening. The postal service is not going up the street. It's making sporadic deliveries. We're getting mail late. We have no delivery service, no access to the street. I'm really concerned. There's standing water in the street. I know they came in with BOMAG. I know something about civil engineering. Looks like they're going to have to re-scarify and recompact the whole thing. They've used concrete rubble in some of the soft zones where the curves are. Nice fix. If you looked in the hole, you would have known what the problem is. Plasticity of the subgrade down about 18 inches is huge. Huge. I'm talking, I can see it. And I'm very dissatisfied with what's been happening. I don't think the contractor's been pushed. I've pushed ASCI before. I don't think they're treating it with any respect. We're the people on the street. There's been long lifetimes of the street being worked on. They seem to go out and rush around Friday afternoon to try to get it graded and make a big showing before the week's out, so nobody will think they sat on it the whole week. I just am very concerned right now with all the standing water that's taking place. I think the street's going to be a bigger disaster now than it was before. And I'm glad to hear that they're looking at the Circle Park irrigation problem finally, because that's been going on for years. I brought it up on a couple occasions to people in the past. In city government, my personal house has water running under the basement 100% of the time. That's why I have 2 sump pumps that work most of the time. This is a dry community. Take note. But I hope I made myself clear. I think it's a disaster. I think the situation needs leadership right now. Somebody needs to take ownership. This could run another 2 or 3 weeks, the way I see it. Compaction tests. And I guess the question I have is what people did up front concerning preparation for this project. I don't know. I really don't have a firm grasp, but if this is the way you're going to do the street projects ongoing from here on forward, you're going to have trouble. This is Wasn't even thought of as to how this top section was going to be paved, how people were going to get the cars back in front of their house. We have a 12-inch step off between the subgrade and the bottom of the pan on a curb and gutter section. There's no way people are going to drive a vehicle, even on weekends, into their driveway. So essentially, you've got people walking back and forth, parking half a mile away, maybe not half a mile, but inconvenient enough. They're dragging stuff back and forth. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I will say that grading has been a difficult problem. It's starting back last year when we couldn't even get to it. So I totally feel for you, and I wish this was running smoother. But I think in the long haul, it's going to be better with mitigation of some of these things. But the short-term pain, I fully feel for you. Additional public comment?
My name's Sue Whale. Thank you for this opportunity. I live on Graydon Court, the same end, the cul-de-sac end. And I guess my main push would be, as it always has been, let's see how we can get this wrapped up and expedited. And I, at one point, brought that up after 2 weeks to the intern, Lisa Ritchie, and especially after we had had a more miserable time than any of us, I think, were banking for. And then we found out that the construction company didn't do the intersection with our end, and that's our only way out. So we were going to be blocked again when they did it with the lower end of the road. So we were going to have to sit double time with no access to our cars and compete with parking with the rest of the street. And so I asked Lisa, is there any way this can be expedited and moved forward faster? Can they just put on extra teams and get it wrapped up? And she absolutely assured me that would not happen, and that this was up to the construction company, how they did it, if they put people on, if they had overflow from other jobs that they wanted to bring over here in the first place to do this job. And so the day after 4th of July, I got in to see Alex, and thank you again, Alex, for being available on the spot. And I talked for a half an hour about numerous problems, issues, concerns, safety, parking, nothing for handicap, no communication that was either reliable or daily. It was intermittent, and we never knew what was coming, what was going, when we could pull in, when we couldn't be on the road. And I'll be honest with you, going back to the beginning, I left town the first day thinking, I'm going to miss the first half of these 3 days that we're told that would be closed. And I showed up at noon the second day in the middle of it, expecting to see all kinds of activity, and nothing. No one was there for the rest of that day. No one was there for most of the rest of the week. And the following week, they quit on Wednesday because they found water. And then I was told they were absolutely surprised they found water, and then they were absolutely unprepared to deal with water. And Sandy, thank you for your comments about a master documentation, because I'm an original homeowner there, and I've known from day one that there was water problems on an entire, people were talking about suing because their basements were constantly flooded and the end of the road. And my feeling is I can't believe that a project like this was started without the information and knowledge of what was being dealt with, and you don't start a project without knowing you can wrap it up when you are on a residential street and disrupting this many lives. And it's not just our lives, it's all the lives we're disrupting too. And this is a time when we all plan, and about the only time we have to plan home improvement projects and have vacationing house guests, and there's nowhere for anyone to park, and there have been so many issues. I mean, we're not even touching the tip here. And so when I talked with Alex, based on the conversation with Alex, The construction company, again, I was told, would not be expediting anything, and that Alex had no influence on that and what they did, and that they could put on as many or as few and take as long or short as they wanted, and that they were under no management. They could do what they wanted, when they wanted, at their own timing. And additionally, the communication issues that we were experiencing went all the way down the line. According to the conversation with Alex, he wasn't getting them to communicate with him, let alone then with the intern, and then it was all, of course, playing telephone, and we were getting very little and nothing to justify. So we felt safety issues were involved, and welfare being involved, and well-being. The frustration level has been just unbelievable. And the feeling is that this may be what you end up with when you're not looking at the history of the street and you go with the lowest bid. My understanding was we saved $250,000 by going with the lowest bid, and look where we are. That works great when you're talking about the edge of town where there isn't a thriving residential area and people's lives going on. To have a construction company come and go as they wish and get something done for a low price, in my opinion. And since there was nobody to talk to for any support, eventually we found it through the deputy fire chief. And he immediately was concerned and upset that this project was still going on at 2.5 weeks when I called him, and said he was still under the understanding that it was a 3-day project with a few days of limited access after that, and that we'd be able to drive the streets after 5 p.m., yet our signs say 7 p.m., and it's like we should be grateful that we have from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. to use the street. But I don't know how that works in anybody's schedule on our street. I'd have to go get my car down the other street, bring it over, and then have it back before 7 a.m. the next day down the street, or we'd get towed. So that didn't really give us much of any limited access use at all. It was like worthless. And the fire chief had thought it was 5 p.m. himself. Have I gone over time?
You're fine.
I apologize. So the deputy fire chief was not kept in the loop, and by then a lot of us were very concerned. Could they even access the road? We didn't know. And about personal emergencies, family accidents, you name it, when you need your car right there to rush somewhere or anything. And if you're going to a meeting and you need to look right and you're leaving in the rain and you have to walk 1/4 mile, or sweating from the triple digits by the time you get to wherever you're trying to present yourself. I had asked, at least by 2 weeks, the intern if there could be some sort of handicap parking, because I was hearing horrible stories of neighbors who, or people visiting neighbors who needed closer parking for urgent reasons. And occasionally somebody has a mobility issue, or maybe all the time. None of that was ever set up. No special parking. Trenches have been left open on different places of the street for days, wide open, deep, not covered, ever. And I asked for daily emails. I think we're starting to get them. I'd say one of the most distressing things for me has actually been seeing the streets sit idle while our lives are turned upside down, more than I would have ever imagined. And right now I couldn't even cross the street to talk to my neighbors. The mud is so deep. I've ruined a pair of shoes. I've ruined the tires on my car. They're this thick with mud. And it was wonderful to hear the news that it was open this weekend for us, and we could roam the streets with our cars, and please park on the please park on one particular side, and I think that was the side where there's all these piles of gravel and not parking spaces, at least where I live. And the other side was just so muddy, nobody dared. And we all still spent the weekend, most of us, parked down the next street. The next street has not been kept in the loop. They're being barraged with our cars. They have their remodeling and house guests and no parking spots and not getting messages about what's going on. And I feel sorry for all of us. and you too, after hearing me. Thank you for listening so well to my version of things, and I think that's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Additional public comment?
Hi, my name is Aruna. I also live on Raincoat. I'm Sue's front door neighbor. The reason I came here was because my son had an accident at the bike park and broke his collarbone. And with the broken collarbone, he had to walk all the way from Holyoke to Graydon Court after the emergency. So my thing is, at least they should give us, do something such that we can get to our driveways in the time being where they're not working, because my kids are home all the time and they see nobody working on the street. They're like, Mom, nobody's working. When are they going to get this fixed? And for the last 1 week, he's been walking up and down whenever we go to the doctors from Holyoke all the way to our house. The thing is, I feel that his bone is getting fixed much faster than our road is getting fixed. That's the truth. He feels much more better and more able right now, and our street is in the same condition. But otherwise, I agree with all what my neighbors have said so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to hear about your son. Additional public comment? Anybody else?
Can I add something?
If it's short, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
But proper protocol. Tom Ricker, 2047, Great Court. On the French drain thing, I guess I missed this escapade last week because I was in Estes Park trying to avoid this, going on vacation. And I see it on the one side, and I believe it's the west side of the street. And down at our end of the block, that's the high end of the curb profile. So you might want to look on the east side, because I think there's going to be a big soft zone development along that side. And I don't see the provision unless they're planning to do both sides of the street. I really am concerned about the scarifying recompaction of the street at this point. I think it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to grind out. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Pennington, Trustee Williams.
Yeah, I'm very disturbed. Who is this subcontractor? Is it somebody we have a long history with? I forget who's running this part of the project.
It's Asphalt Specialties.
And do we have a long positive history with them?
They were the contractor that did the street and concrete reconstruction last year as well.
And why is it they're not on the job on a continuous basis to get it done? Is that an accurate statement? Why is there not constant activity? And why don't we have pull with them to get it done?
Alex, you want to come on? Alex is better prepared to answer that question.
2 answers to that. There were some issues in the first part of it in terms of them mobilizing and getting their procedures going and so forth, and there were times that they weren't working, or for whatever reasons. We had paving scheduled, I think, for the 21st and 22nd. That didn't happen, and that was for something that happened on their end. On the grading issue was more, we found a water issue, and again, maybe we should have known about it, maybe we shouldn't, but there was major water issue. When I first saw it, my initial impression was we need a storm sewer here. And it took a week to research and come up with a solution. I was gone for a week as well, but I don't want to get that as an excuse. The engineers were researching what the solution should be, so during that period of time, until we figured out what solution was appropriate for that area, not much got done. So there's a week that we lost during that time period.
Well, my just follow-up is, and I'm sure I speak for everybody, obviously, we need to know when this is going to be done, and I think before we dig another hole, we've got to have assurances that this isn't going to happen the next place a hole is dug. So, I certainly hope, as I'm sure you do, Alex and Matt, that this is not a pattern that's going to continue. And so in your opinion, when will this current situation be resolved on Graydon?
Before the rain delay, it was scheduled to be paved this week. That the
Totally?
The underdrain was being installed. The southern half of Graydon was milled last week on Friday, I believe. And they were to come in, finish the underdrain, and then do the grading and compacting of the base. That would have been done today and tomorrow. Maybe push back a couple of days. But I'm sure by the end of the week we'll have the base situation cleared up, so there's not a 12-inch drop-off that we have. And if you've been out to Dillon, we have a very hard base. People can drive on it. It's a very drivable surface, and awaiting that base lift of paving. Again, I want to compliment the residents. We've inconvenienced a number of residents. A lot of people are saying, hey, it's been an inconvenience, but we want the road fixed and do what it takes to get the road fixed. We can't, Sue wants a lot of answers. The contractor is out there doing their job. We can't micromanage where their equipment is, what crews are, and so forth. We can't directly manage the work. We have meetings with them. We have engineers on site. We have inspectors on site, making sure they do the job right. But we don't dictate exactly how these things are done. I mean, that's not our role. We have a contract. It sets out all the criteria, how the work has to be done, what criteria has to be followed. But we don't dictate, other than the hours of operation, when and where the crews are going to be done. We can ride herd on them, and yes, I'm disappointed in some of the things that happen on Graydon. I'm more pleased on some of the other roads that have gone a little more smoothly.
Alex, quick question. What was the issue that we ran into last year where we weren't able to finish the project in that same area?
Well, that was, that's when we were doing the patch and overlay.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to do reconstruction of a couple of roads that raised the cost to a point that we had to back some streets that were planned for that year out of the program. The technique we're using this year ensures that the streets, all the streets that we planned for this year will get done this year.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we had this $30,000 ad, but all the other quantities are running under what we had expected. So we don't anticipate
Because
the budget.
on this technique, you're doing the whole stretch of the road.
Right.
Not just those areas that you find are really bad and need to do reconstruction.
But we ran into some issues where they said it was going to cost too much to repair and it wasn't part of the budget. So they
Right.
stopped the project early.
Yeah.
So was that what had to do something with expansive soils or excess water?
Bad, yeah. The
So-
base is so bad in those areas that we had to reconstruct some larger lengths of road than we anticipated, which ate up more of the budget, which caused us to have to back some of the streets out.
I guess if it's the same firm that's working on it this year, I'm disappointed to hear that they stopped the project because there was excess water, they didn't know what to do, and they had to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure it out.
No,
And they-
we stopped the job. We said, hey, there's too much water here. What you're doing, and we didn't even think that the concrete cobble, the water situation was a lot bigger. So we stopped it in terms of that. and things didn't get done until the engineers came up with a solution and we approved.
Trustee
Okay.
Williams?
So, in moving forward, I mean, you can figure out what happened and how to fix it all in the future and who's at fault and who isn't, but what can we do to get it done in the next 3 days? What do we have to do to make that happen?
Soil has to be dry.
Yeah, I'm meeting with the contractor tomorrow to go over all these issues, because I haven't met with the contractor in 2 weeks because of vacation, and last week we were paving on the day that we were supposed to have our meeting. So I'm meeting with tomorrow, and I'll bring up all these issues and expect some answers. And
So how long does it take to dry out?
to
A day?
me, I mean,
24
the way,
hours?
The way things happen, I mean, it dried up pretty quick today in terms of the water. We'll have to assess the situation first thing in the morning to see how things are. But I think we should, regardless, be able to haul off any soft spots we have, and we have a lot of millings to put down. So I'm confident that we can get the base ready, if not paved this week. We'll have the base ready, compacted, and all set to go for paving, and probably paving either Friday or Saturday or Monday or Tuesday.
And so do we have anything in the contract that has some kind of penalty or some kind of recourse that we can request that they work 24/7, that they work round the clock so that we can get this done in 2 or 3 days? I mean, my goal at this point is
they're not
I don't want to
gonna-
worry about
they're not
who's
gonna
at
work
fault.
at night.
I don't think
Right.
the residents would want to be there.
And we don't want
2
them
o'clock
out.
in the morning. Which-
Yeah, but the point's
The
well
point
made.
is, wait, can I-
We
whoa.
understand, I hear the residents, and I completely understand where they're coming from. I understand the board wants this done. I think
I
Alex has
want
heard
it.
them.
And
so,
okay, I feel, let's stop worrying about who's at fault, and let's just get it done as fast as possible and make any concessions that we have to make in order to get it done. If that means we have to spend extra money, then we should do it, period. I mean, that's,
My
we've
understanding
put
now.
these people 3-4 weeks out, and some of these conditions to me is just unbelievable. And we just need to bite the bullet and do it, whatever it takes, and, learn from it after the fact. But in other words, if it's going to cost another 50 grand or whatever it takes, I think we just need to do it.
Well, I think it's, we need to move on from this subject so we can continue the meeting, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're ready to go. It's now just an engineering thing, because what we don't want to do is have the residents go through this 5 years from now again. So we need to get it done right, and so we don't come back. So unfortunately, you have to wait a little bit until everything gets dried out and everything's compacted. So it doesn't sound, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's any other holdup besides that.
No, and the weather looks good for this week, so
Yeah, it does.
I'm confident that we should be able to proceed along and get it done this week.
Okay, thanks.
So you don't think that a week from now we'll still be talking about this and this will still be lingering?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
We don't have a meeting for 2 weeks, and I would ask for periodic updates to the board. You probably planned on that anyway, Matt, to please keep us informed on the progress of this every couple of days or something like that,
Sure,
quick
it's all
update.
on the website, and we'll give you reports, but we update the schedule periodically of what roads are being, worked on and what roads are going to be paved at what times.
Right. Don't want to take you off your road management projects, but I'd like to just be kept abreast.
Sure.
I'll check that as well, but any problems arise that aren't on the website, I'd like to know, please.
And Alex, I appreciate, what you're doing and how you're moving forward on this project and trying to help the residents. And so I just want you to know that I'm not putting any blame or fault here on anyone. I'm just hoping that we can just get it done.
And this has been a difficult, when we started this project, there was potential of this happening, and I really compliment the residents that bear through all this, because they put up with a lot, and But hopefully, in the end, they're going to have a product they're going to be proud of.
Great, thanks.
Thanks.
So if it's okay, I'd like to move off of this topic, but would like to have any other public comment about other issues unless it's critically relevant. Sure.
Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. I just want to, I'm going to ask a question. I don't expect an answer now, and I'd be happy to discuss it with staff offline. But to Trustee Pennington's point about not digging any more holes until we know, this is the first part of a big project. You know, I live on Clayton Circle, which is one of the biggest pieces of this project, which isn't even scheduled to begin until August, and is to run through, much of August. So I'd like to know, is there a chain reaction here? Is it affecting everything else? Are the problems that came up on Graydon, can we do the kind of look ahead at the other pieces of this puzzle and before we start digging? At some point, I'd rather see it put off to another year than have to go through weeks of this. Like everyone else, we were told 3 days, and that became could be 10 days, and I understand rain. But if we're having problems like this, I would really hope we can look at what the impact is going to be for the other parts of the project down the line.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Additional public comment on other topics? Okay, don't see any. Then brings us to item number 6, presentations. And tonight we have our chamber president. Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you. I will make it brief based on our timing for the evening. I just wanted to let you know that...
And who are you again?
Oh, sorry. I'm Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce. I apologize. I'm trying to be so brief that I can't introduce myself. I wanted to extend an invitation, as I think many of you know, but to anyone listening and watching as well, that tomorrow we are hosting a groundbreaking for Guardian Storage Solutions. The town I've been working with Beth on coordinating that event, and they're bringing in some of their executives are flying in for the event. It is at 1 p.m. Guardian Storage Solutions is breaking ground right behind Costco, if you did not know. It's a very exciting project. We don't get a lot of groundbreaking in the immediate past here in Superior, so it's a very exciting time. The Chamber's proud to be part of this project and is helping them with securing a caterer and setting up the site. So if you would like to join us, anyone and everyone is welcome. It shouldn't be too long of an event, but it's an exciting thing for the town.
Great, thank you so much.
Let me know if you are planning on going.
I will be out of
I am.
town.
I'll try to be there.
Okay. Very good. Thanks. That brings item number 7, consent agenda. And remaining on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the June 25th, 2012 and June 28th, 2012 Special Board of Trustees meetings, acceptance of the minutes of the Historical Commission meeting, approval of a liquor license renewal for Buffalo Wild Wings, and adoption of a resolution approving an amendment to the lease agreement with Blackstone Properties Brixmore Holdings for the Sheriff's Department substation. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Williams, seconded by Trustee Hansen. Discussion.
Yes, I'd like to abstain from the approval of the minutes for June 25th.
Any other comments? Seeing none, Phyllis?
Hanson,
Yes.
Muckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Great, thanks. That brings us now to what was 7D, approval of second quarter contingency grants. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. We had an error in the staff cover memo to the board with regard to the one application request for grant contingency funds by the board. Their request was for $3,247.50 Monarch Little League for additional equipment for the league. There's an amount available, $2,500 this quarter. In the grant fund guidelines, there's a restriction that any program or entity can receive no more than $1,500 in a 2-year period. The staff recommendation was to award the full $2,500 because it was the only applicant. However, based on the guidelines, I would change the staff recommendation to $1,500 to adhere to the guidelines within the program.
Okay. Questions from the board? Trustee Pennington?
It wasn't specific that I saw on the number of Superior youth who participate. Did I miss?
Yeah, it was,
or,
I thought it was, let's see.
From my personal perspective, it's a bunch.
Yeah, 50% is what's in the,
Okay.
50% of the
So-
league is Superior residents.
Okay. So you say 460 players. I can assume that's about 230 Superior. And then the second thing is I'm finding it a little, love baseball, but I'm finding it a little difficult to understand why in this tight economic time we just have one application. In your opinion, why is that?
I couldn't give you any reasons. Last quarter, we had 3, I believe. It just kind of fluctuates throughout the year, the number of applicants we get. And some of it depends on the different programs and when they're currently underway and if school's in session or not.
Well, I guess I just like us internally to do a sort of review of processes and notifications and publication and all that kind of stuff to make sure that every group that's eligible understands these funds are available.
Yeah, I mean, we met with all 3 principals over the last month and let them know about the program.
Right. Do
sent
we do
it
a
out in the
form letter?
newsletter and
Do we do a
e-blast
form letter
and
to
website.
these entities?
No.
Is there a way to know who they are? Can a form letter be emailed or a list, an email list be made and just an email to them?
Yeah, I mean, we send out an e-blast. And
But are they on the receiving end of that e-blast?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. I think the fact that there's one app sort of points out there may be an issue here. So I'd just like us as a town to assess that. I think it's a meritorious program, but I'm a little concerned about awareness.
Okay. Additional comments? Any public comment regarding this? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, which would be to approve an amount of $1,500 to Monarch Little League for various equipment improvements.
I don't have it. I'm sorry. I have the resolution up.
No, there is
No resolution.
Yes.
There's no resolution. Just a motion.
I make motion to approve the contingency grant application for Monarch Little League in the amount of $1,500.
Motion by Trustee Hanson. Is there a second? Trustee Pennington Williams. Pennington, we'll call it. And Phyllis?
Muckle,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Great, thanks. That brings us to item number 8, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with KP Consulting Associates as an economic development consultant. Mr. Megley?
Thank you, Mayor. Per the board's direction, back in April, the staff released a request for proposals for companies to provide economic development services to the town. The RFP was released on May 14th of 2012. 3 proposals were submitted to the town: Centro, Puma, and KP Consulting and Associates, to perform these services to the town. Staff did an initial review of each of the proposals and ended up interviewing 2 of the firms, Puma and KP Consulting Associates. In the interviews were myself, Heather Craycraft, the Superior Chamber Executive Director, and Beth Moisky, our Assistant Town Manager. Based on those interviews, both firms seem to be well qualified, but in the end, staff and Heather felt that KP Consulting Services provided a better fit for our community and what we're looking for and moving forward and seeking retailers and different commercial users for the projects that we have upcoming, including the town center projects. So as a result of that, we are recommending a agreement with KP Consulting Services for economic development services. agreement is attached. The amount for the period of July through December 2012 is $24,500. We had budgeted in 2012 $30,000 for these services, so it's under our budgeted amount for 2012. We think that this provides, or will provide, something that the town's been missing in seeking out specific retailers, getting a good idea of what we need for our town, and actively go out and seek those retailers, as well as have somebody who's connected to that profession in that industry and knows the people and can get us connected with those companies who are expanding or maybe looking to locate to Superior. So I'm excited about bringing Katie Press is here tonight. She's over there with KP. She's principal of KP Consulting, is here if the board would like to. I don't know if Katie, you have anything you'd like to get up and say to the board, but as well, if the board has any questions. But I'm excited to start working with Katie and see what we can do over the next 6 months.
Good evening. My name is Katie Press. I'm really excited to be able to get started and dig into the community and understand your retail community and how we can influence and enhance your existing retail. So I'm happy to answer any questions about my background or who I am or what expertise it is I bring to the table. Would you like a quick synopsis about me?
Sure.
I've been in the retail industry for going on almost 30 years. I actually grew up on the retailer side. I was a retailer. I actually built the Safeway store here in Superior a number of years ago. I was telling Matt I can remember the town council meeting because the power went out and I had to do my presentation in the dark. When I left Safeway in 2000 and actually we jumped to the developer side of the table. So I've have lived on both sides of the table. Not only have I been a retailer for major corporations, but I've also been a developer and understand both sides of it. I left my gig as a developer in the early 2000s and became a consultant. And I traditionally consult on the private sector side, and I work with all kinds of major real estate developers and retailers. And in the last few years, I've actually had more experience working with municipalities. I've had some municipalities who reach out and want to become more relevant in retail and aren't exactly sure about how to go through that. So my connections are very deep in the retail arena. Generally, I'm not an academic. If I want to know what Best Buy is going to do, I pick up the phone and call Best Buy and say, hey, Melissa, what are you doing and why are you doing it? So that's kind of the unique perspective I bring to the table, and also the length of time in the marketplace and the connections and the people that I know that are able to provide insight and background as to what we're doing. My approach is twofold. The first is before you can really endeavor on a recruitment program for retail, you have to understand who you are in the retail arena. I mean, what is your dot on the map? What does it mean to be superior, and how does superior relate to the broader retail market, and how do retailers evaluate and look at this in terms of how they make location decisions? So that'll be the first thing that we'll do, is we'll embark on what is superior in terms of the overall market, and in terms of not only just the corridor, but as well as the broader arena, because retail spans out depending on the genre. Once we've done that, we'll be able to identify who's missing, and then be able to try and do a targeted effort in trying to figure out how do we get those folks to evaluate Superior as an opportunity.
Great, thanks. Trustee Williams?
So I know you have not actually delved into the work at this point, but looking at what you've analyzed to this point, what do you think Superior's challenges are for the future, and what do you think are some of our successes that we should be continuing with?
I haven't jumped in from the retail perspective at all, because until you actually have the job, you don't want to start picking up the phone and start talking to people. I mean, it doesn't look good. How's that? I'm hoping to get this job, and so I was going to ask you some questions. Now, so that'll be.
But I mean, just your immediate reaction.
The challenges, the opportunity and the challenges are actually similar in the sense that how do we position this particular community in light of what is existing up and down the corridor? And there are some shifting dynamics that are going on in the corridor as it relates to retail. And when we look at the corridor, it really starts at Boulder and it comes all the way down the 36 corridor. Some of those shifting dynamics are going to be a positive, and some of those shifting dynamics are going to be a negative in terms of how retailers are looking at the corridor and how they might be evaluating opportunities. And that's where we really need to dig in and figure out, which is which. How's that? Which is the positive and which is the negative. And so from that, we're really going to be able to determine, there's what our opportunities are. There's a lot of legwork that I like to do, and I, like I said, I pick up the phone and call the retailers and say, how are you doing here? Why are you doing here? What are your challenges? If this is a marginal store for you, why do you think it's a marginal store? And really start to understand what is not working for them. They're very, very quick to be able to tell you what doesn't work. And so understanding that really helps us frame the bigger picture and how we look at how you guys fit or how Superior fits within the corridor in terms of other competitive factors that are in the corridor. And there are several. And those are the things that we will help identify and look at what they present, either an opportunity or challenges to the community. And I'm sorry, that sounds kind of like...
No, actually, I see why they picked you.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Additional board questions? So I had a...
Please feel free. Well, just in your experience with the smaller businesses, what have you found have been some of the challenges that they've had in other communities to stay in business?
To be frank with you, I don't really work I don't work closely with independent retailers. Independent retailers are they're a different breed of cat, so to speak. They have a different dynamic that comes to the table with them. Many times they're independents, and so they have a number of pluses and minuses, again, that are associated with them that are less definable than when you really work with the national chain retailers. And it's hard to go out and recruit, small-scale independent retailers because for the most part, we really can't identify who they are. In some cases, there's somebody who's still conceptualizing the business in their mind and they haven't made themselves available, at least from a visible perspective, in terms of understanding how to place them in the market. If we're talking about existing small-scale retailers.
Existing businesses in the marketplace, yeah.
Yeah, who may be challenging. We'll sit down and take a look at that. They're generally, it's going to be a combination of things that maybe make them in that, if they're struggling, if they're stressed as a retailer. It's going to be either their own operations, their concept, or there's going to be a larger issue at play in terms of the operation of the shopping center, or it may be a combination of all three. But trying to help understand who that is, who's struggling over there, and what the factors are that particular retailer is struggling with, those are all things that we'll just dig into and take a look at and try and figure out what it is. If it's a concept or it's an operational factor, we probably aren't going to have very much influence on them. If it has an issue to do with the broader scale of the shopping center and some things that are going on in the shopping center, then we have some opportunity to roll our sleeves up and take a look at whether we can become an instrumental partner with the shopping center owners to look at how we potentially fix some of those things.
Okay, thanks.
Does that?
So, sticking with the shopping center right now, so what are sounds like, the small scale retailers are not going to be probably something that we could do a whole bunch of unless there's a shopping center issue. So what are the square foot type of retailers that you would be working on retention and business issues, and which ones would you potentially be looking to recruit?
Well, from a retention perspective, we're going to look at your existing retail base and try and understand it. So if we have a small-scale retailer, even if he's 1,500 square feet, and he's struggling, and he has a position in the center that we're interested in understanding why he's struggling, we're going to answer those questions. In terms of recruitment, recruitment really focuses on national chain retailers, regardless of size, because they're identifiable and they're understandable. I mean, we understand how, if we're, and just for lack of a better example, I mean, if we understand exactly what it takes to put a Starbucks into a shopping center, and they do it over and over and over again, and we can then assess whether or not we have an opportunity that's a match for them, it's a much different experience than it is to try and identify independent retailers who for one reason or another, just don't have identifiable perspective that we do with the national chains. So, I work with all national chain retailers because they are day in, day out who is the industry. Independent retailers certainly fill in and complement national chain retailers, but our ability to go out and recruit them is a much different recruitment effort than it is to really deal with the national chains. Does that?
Mhm.
So it's not an issue of size. It's an issue of having to be able to identify who they are and how you get to them and how it's very difficult in today's environment to really work with independent retailers because we're not in an environment where capital is that accessible, and opportunities are not that easily realized by them. And so that's not always, the most fruitful effort on an economic development perspective because it's very difficult to get those guys. Even if we can find them and they have a concept that we think is worthwhile, actually putting them in place and getting them operating is a huge piece of the puzzle that you don't have with national chain retailers.
And so, just if I can, just a few more questions here. So, sticking with the town center site, there's a few pads that we have. Would that be a focus area? I mean, there's empty shop space already, but there's a few pads that haven't been filled either.
Yeah,
Would
absolutely.
that be
Absolutely a focus.
You meant the Superior Marketplace.
Marketplace. You said town
Town
center.
center.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm getting to that next. So, before I get there, so what would obviously there is a Brixmor is a big company, and they will coordinate with a leasing agent, and they might even do their own their own outreach to national retailers. What would the relationship between what you're doing and what they do? How would you describe that relationship?
Well, it would be nice to know who they are reaching out to, just understanding who they are. I mean, there's an assumption always that owners of large shopping centers are as versed in the marketplace as they need to be, and that's not always an accurate assumption. So understanding what they are doing and what kind of exposure and who they work with. I mean, if you're not active in the local arena with the local brokers, you may not be getting much traction. To be honest with you, when Matt mentioned that there's freestanding pads over there, I said there are. So I think making sure that they are doing the things that would be beneficial to the town in terms of expanding and maintaining the retail base. That's going to be absolutely something because they represent the bulk of retail for the town of Superior. So understanding what they're doing and whether or not there are tools that the town can actually start to implement or look at that would help enhance their ability to be a better shopping center operator. Those are the things that we're gonna absolutely dig into.
So Brixmor being a relatively new entity with veterans being in there, have you had any interaction with Brixmor at all?
No, I have not. I'm not familiar with them. I'm familiar with most of the large-scale shopping center owners that are in town, especially in Colorado, and so I'm not familiar with them. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to try and figure out what they're about and what their plans are and who their leasing agent is and whether he's actually, it's interesting to me, I'm pretty well connected in the industry, and I never hear it talked about. I never hear the shopping center being talked about. And so those are some things that we need to probably change.
Okay. And then moving now to the town center, we're actively working on a PD process. So how would you see the interaction with an incomplete PD plan right now and then trying to find new retailers to fill that spot without having that completed?
And I have to be honest with you, I have no working knowledge of the plans. I haven't even seen them. So that'll be one of the first things I really want to get my hands on and understand how the depth and scale of it and how it lays out and how it's going to relate. And then, I work with the more immediate retail future, and retailers in general do not have what we call long vision. They're pretty short term in their vision, especially their development horizons are pretty short term. So helping the town of Superior understand how today's retail environment may or may not respond to that opportunity and whether or not there has to be a longer vision perhaps by the town because the retail community may not be into that long vision mode. Those will be the things that I'll work with staff on to help them understand.
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't mean that the concept is not necessarily worthwhile. It just may be that the vision of how you see, when you see it implementing and how you see it implementing may be slightly different than what the market is willing to accept from that. And so helping to identify that and look at that is certainly one of my tasks.
And so you'd be working with their, I mean, the broker is slightly different broker over there. They're talking about raw land brokerage, I assume, over there, but
Yeah.
you'd have some connection with them as well.
Absolutely. I'm anxious to sit down and hear exactly what they're planning and what their path to execution is and what their expectation is. And retail is a fairly singular aspect of the market. We really don't do anything other than that. And most of the guys who live in my world, we don't do multifamily, we don't do office, and so if you're not part of that world, it can be tough to understand it fully. And so I'd be very anxious to see if they have that crossover, if that's something that I can help them provide, is the crossover connections that's going to help them become more successful in the retail arena.
And my last question, I'm sorry, I know there's
I'm
others.
good
So,
now. You've answered mine.
I think that we've been told that there's probably 600,000 square feet of empty retail in the corridor. Do you think this is the time is right to try to find new people, or it seems like it'll be difficult to say the least?
That's part of those changing dynamics of the corridor, though, and not, one of the things that we've really seen that's happened in retail is that not everything that was retail should be retail again, or has the capability of being retail again. And that's part of that changing dynamic in the corridor that I think you're going to see that may enhance opportunities in Superior or may become a challenge to Superior.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Williams, Trustee Pennington?
You answered. Thank you.
Trustee Pennington?
So Katie, tell us about project management. Are you going to be our point person handling the project, or will you assign it to staff?
Oh, if only I had staff. No,
Okay.
It's me, myself, and I.
Okay.
I'm a single entity person. It's very difficult to do what I do without the background that I have. It's not something that I can bring somebody along and expand my business. So it's just me. You get me 100% of the time.
And in the interest of conflict of interest, sort of disclosures and all that kind of stuff, explain to me how your revenue stream works. We hire you, you get paid by us. But
Correct.
if you succeed in attracting XYZ retailer,
get
is there any?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm not a broker, I'm not a developer, and I'm not a retailer, I'm a consultant, and so my responsibility to you is to you and to you guys only.
Okay. And maybe Matt, or you could refresh us, if you were hired this evening, when can we expect certain reports, or what would that process be?
Well, I think we're talking about starting July 23rd or somewhere in that time frame. So I would expect, Kay, probably need a couple months, I would think,
Yeah.
just to sit down with us and pick our brains and see what we got going on, and then
I have a lot of legwork to do.
Yeah.
It takes me several months just to fully reach out and gather back the information I need to, and then I summarize. So at the end of as the end of the first phase, which is really going back to that summarization of who is superior in the retail marketplace, that takes me about 2.5 months to get that work done and provide that report back to you. And I generally like to come back and do that with council and share those findings with you, and then go over what are going to be the strategic next steps, which is really the implementation part of what we've learned out of phase one.
I've got two more quick things. We have a contract in place right now with a town center group, and one of those people has already done quite a bit of work on holes, size of market, demographics, reach, influx, outflux, whatever. Right. Will you be in contact with that person? I'm interested in efficiencies here. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
I would
great.
be most interested to read that gap study.
Okay. And to what extent, going back to the mayor's Brixmore question, to what extent, why should Brixmore cooperate with you? And tell us your success in collaborating with obviously they're the management company. Is there is it symbiotic, is it collaborative, or can it be?
It can be. It
okay.
really depends. I mean, when you look at how a municipality can impact the private sector, you have two choices. You either have a carrot or you have a stick. Or in some cases, it's going to be you might use both. Generally, the carrot will get you more results than the stick. So sometimes it looks at. I had an opportunity to work with the city of Arvada. We have a major shopping center at I-70 in Wadsworth. You might be familiar with it. It has a Sam's Club in it. It's a dated shopping center. There's a number of issues associated with it. It needed renovation of some sort. I mean, it needed to be refreshed in terms of the consumer. The consumer needed to look at that shopping center slightly differently than it has been. And one of the things that we really evaluated when we looked at that was the landscaping had reached a level of maturity that it included all visibility into the shopping center. And that shopping center, if you're familiar with it, has some very limited visibility corridors. And it also had no presence along I-70. And architecturally, it's very monolithic. It's all brick and it has very little architectural articulation. And so we knew in today's environment that we were not going to see vast amount of capital improvement into an existing asset that for all practical purposes looks rather healthy on paper. And so we actually embarked on a more aggressive program to come up with a comprehensive signage program which allowed signage to be looked at outside of code and to be looked at in a comprehensive basis, which allows the shopping center owner to apply for higher profile signage along the I-70 corridor, which the code previously didn't allow. And then we also went about landscaping from a redevelopment perspective. So we really sat down and looked at how do we approach landscaping, not from a new development perspective, but from a redevelopment perspective. And how do we utilize that view to refresh a shopping center? Because landscaping can be a very impactful component, especially to a shopping center that's reading dated. And so, and then we offered those as tools. I mean, we pitched that to Inland, which is a very large shopping center owner across the country, one of the largest, in fact, and very institutional in their thinking, and said, here are some things that we think could enhance what you're doing. We also offered that to the retailers who were in the shopping centers that we think this enhances as well. And so those two factors alone were enough for them to say we could see how this was a positive aspect for our shopping center, as well as the retailers saying we think this is very positive for the shopping center. And so, in fact, they've now embarked and just submitted their final new landscaping plans that regenerates all the landscaping throughout the shopping center and actually brings a new element of signage in a way that the signage is going to become more iconic. So it actually becomes an architectural feature of the center, as not just kind of bland signage. So there's a lot of different ways to, once you understand what's wrong with the center and what's not working about it, or why it might be hindering those retailers from operating in its fullest capacity, we're not always going to be able to fix it, not from an economic development perspective. Because to your point, private sector is going to do what impacts them the most, which is financially, positively. And so, but looking at whether we can bring tools to bear that would help them maybe do things that they're not contemplating or hadn't contemplated were even possible. And I will tell you, in Arvada, it was really kind of comical. I mean, I had, these guys were so hesitant about taking down mature trees that they thought we were going to have a conniption, and we were like, no, this is something we can see the value of, bringing more color, newer landscaping in, taking out older dated trees that weren't really providing value. But they were so hesitant because they were so ingrained in what the code is, that allowing them to get outside of that and be more creative was really a tool for them that they started to grasp slowly, but once they grasped it, they were excited to figure out how to do it and how to make it happen. And it's something that we've now taken throughout the city and have approached other shopping center owners with as availability of a tool.
So I have a question for staff. So from my perspective, it seems like the key element at the moment is the retention issue, but our budget this is a longer term project with different steps and deliverables, the retention things, but then there's the new retailer and filling in the town center. Our budget, and just because how government works, that ends in the end of December. What do you anticipate happens on January 1?
That's a good question. We, in the current draft 2013 budget, we have funds allocated for the services, for these services to continue, if the board chooses to leave those funds in the budget. So, and depending on how the next 6 months go with Katie, which I think is going to go great, we could continue with her and her company, or we could do another RFP. It's, typically we keep a company for more than 1 year, but so.
It just seems like, from my perspective, just looking at this without knowing the details, that this is an 18-month sort of timeline.
Mhm.
You spend 6 months, spend 2 or 3 months reaching out to the retailers and talking to them, and
Sure,
then you
yeah.
come up with a deliverable about what needs to happen so that the Superior Marketplace works well, or the Safeway Shopping Center. Which, sorry about that. I was there for that approval. I don't remember the lights, but my apologies to you. But then you're going to be you'll identify the retailers that might make sense to go into the marketplace and or the town center. And that is a process that happens over the course of 12 months, at least, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And then the recruitment or the execution.
That's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
that the recruitment would happen over that 12 months and maybe 2 years.
Right.
So is that what you're anticipating?
Yes. Yep.
And do you have thoughts about that? I'm sorry.
Until we know what's the possibilities, I mean, it's going to be interesting to narrow it down and figure out, who still wants to be here and how do we accommodate them. And I think you're going to find that retailers who are attracted to the town center are going to be different than the retailers who are attracted to the shopping center. I mean, they're different opportunities. And there's some crossover by some retailers, but in general, you're going to probably find that they'll look at those as distinctly different opportunities.
Okay, thanks.
How do you feel in terms of sort of putting the cart before the horse here, but we have this whole, and I guess maybe, Matt, it would be you, town center process going on, comp plan process. Would Katie be a regular attendant at all those? It seems to me like we've got so much overlapping going on right now where economic development issues and build-out issues and whatnot are being discussed front and center now. And I'm interested in how we intend to integrate all of them for maximum efficiency.
No, I mean, the comprehensive plan, this is all the information that Katie can use to help with what she provides to the town, definitely. The comprehensive plan team has its own economic consultants.
But I'm wondering if she can be just a quiet participant in the room so she's absorbing the information. Is that something you see?
No,
You don't?
she's got other things that she's going to be doing while we're finishing those two things. And we'll be sharing that information with her. And if she sees something that doesn't make sense, we'll discuss it and then discuss it with the team. So, it's not like we're going to say you can't see any of this stuff until the end of the project.
Right.
But she'll be doing her own research and analysis at the same time as well. But that information is shared amongst everybody. The town center teams met with the comprehensive plan team, and if there's something comes up that Katie feels needs to be discussed, we can set those meetings up and that can be discussed. But
You'll certainly get my opinion on it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to sort of reserve that topic for further discussion here. I'm not sure I agree with that lack of integration because, but don't have to hash that one out. I can come meet with Matt on that one. But, okay.
Just a quick question for Matt. I'm sorry if this has already been discussed or mentioned, but what do you expect to have in your hands at the end of 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is when this is all done?
Well, as Katie mentioned, at the end of the first phase, she'll have a market analysis for the board to look at and review. And then strategies out of that analysis for us to pursue as far as if there's specific retailers that we might want to, or if there's a project. We'll also be working with Paul Shepard, who's the leasing agent with Brixmore, to see how we can help facilitate leasing the shop space or getting some of those 3 pads filled, as well as Safeway Center and Resolute and the Town Center. So I mean, that second phase is when we'll start to look at specific retailers that we might want to go after, or if there's current businesses that may need assistance, or if there's issues with the town or the marketplace that we need to look at, we can work with Brixmore and Katie and myself and see if we can come up with some solution there to help current businesses stay in place.
Okay. And so the businesses identified that we would go after, market to them, we'd have data that we could take to them and say, this is why we think that you're going to be good in this marketplace.
It doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you're talking about
When you-
demographics?
Just, if we go to a business and say, we want you to come here, and here's why, you're going to be able to, we can tell them why.
I mean, they're pretty smart at their business. I mean, when we're talking about national retailers of any level, from the small guys down to 1,500 square feet up to the big guys, they're pretty smart at their business. And they have their own in-house market research guys that they really rely on. And so really it's identifying the opportunity and saying, hey, how come you're not here? I had this opportunity just recently. I was working with another municipality, and I called a major chain retailer who's larger in scale, and I said, hey, how come you're not in XYZ? And he goes, I am. And I said, no, you're not. And he goes, yeah, I know, I'm there. And he's looking through his book, and I said, no, you're not there. And he goes, you know what, we're not there. He goes, why aren't we there? And I said, I don't know. I'm looking at this thinking this works for you. And I have a relationship with him, so he respects, we have mutual respect of our opinions. And he goes, Katie, I guess we should be looking at that. I just don't think it's really been on our list. So sometimes, I mean, they instinctively have some idea of the markets that they can operate in and if they can be there, but sometimes they're just not thinking about it. So it's more about us saying, we see an opportunity for you. Here's our demographics. Here's what our community's about. But in terms of like having a more in-depth, type of marketing type of piece to them, they really don't pay attention to that as much. It's really just illuminating the opportunity and perhaps helping them figure out, in today's environment, to be frank with you, when you're really working with the larger scale retailers, it's what are you going to help them do to get into your marketplace as well. I mean, incentives are a very big key with retail in today's environment. So it may be illuminating an opportunity that they just isn't on their radar screen right now. They've just bypassed and just haven't really looked at, and then whether or not we're willing to help bridge any issues that have kept them from perhaps coming into the marketplace. But one of the things that we're going to look at is, in terms of where the retail placement is going on in the corridor, in terms of what a traditional trade area is for these other retailers, and how does that present the gaps. And you alluded to what's called a gap study. Well, they are a technical piece of information you can do, but there's not a single retailer out there that pays any attention to them. So, doing a gap study and presenting it to a retailer and saying, see here, we have this gap, they don't, that's not something that they look at as useful material in making real estate decisions.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I will tell you that having been a retailer, I used to get guys sending me reports like that, and I was like, I already know where I need to be or where I should be, or if I'm looking at an opportunity, when Safeway made the decision to come to Superior, it was the growth factor that was very attractive to Safeway. There was a residential growth curve that was going on that was very attractive. There was not real competition to enter the marketplace, and so once the opportunity became aware to Safeway, it became attractive to them to move forward. If you'd given me a gap study, that would not have made really any impact in us in terms of how we made a decision. So that's one of the things that's a differentiating factor for me and some of the more conventional consultants out there, is that my approach to this is from what it really takes to make a decision and present it, and making sure we're presenting the right opportunities. Retailers match fairly well to certain types of opportunities, and if we don't have a good match on the opportunity, it's going to severely limit the chances that we have of attracting that particular retailer. So it's understanding all that on the first end, and then being strategic about who we go out and try and recruit, and seeing if we can make an impact with them afterwards.
Okay.
So it sounds like, in a way, we have a catch-22. In other words, in order for the town center to move forward, we need the economy to get obviously better, and to attract new and businesses that are in this gap study that you're talking about. It would not be attractive unless the town center was moving forward. So you keep coming back around the circle, and you're constantly looking at what.
Town center development is different from conventional retail development. It really is its own separate animal, and there are a number of challenges associated with it. So identifying it, and understanding, we have to understand first who we are before we can really determine. There's so many factors that go into understanding what this market means to the retailing community, and then secondarily to that is how does a specific development opportunity that's a little bit different than what is conventional, how does that relate into the bigger picture? And that's really what we have to understand going forward. I mean, I think it's really important that when you reach out to retailers and you're asking them to come look at your community, that you're doing it with some level of sophistication. They respect that. And so understanding who you are and the marketplace is really an important first step, because it allows you that sophistication that when you knock on somebody's door to say with some relative perspective that it's a legitimate knock on their door. They get inundated by so many communities in every city, or in every metropolitan area, in every state. And so the more you can show yourself to be an educated partner, the more they will pay attention to that. So understanding who you are in the marketplace is vital first. And then understanding, do you have the level of support from a consumer basis that's going to be an attractive opportunity for these particular retailers, and especially as you look at a town center, because town center inherently has some challenges in terms of standard operation for retailers. So, the better we can tell the story about Superior, the better we can make it look from those particular perspectives, the better chances you have of, one, targeting the right retailers, and two, having a better success of landing them in your opportunity. It doesn't do you any good to just get a list of every retailer and start making the phone calls, because 9 times out of 10, if you had your staff do that, they're not even going to get called back. You're not going to get any meaningful information out of that kind of an exchange. And so it's really, I think, much more strategic to understand who you are in the marketplace, who you're best suited to go and try and attract, and then be very targeted in that attraction and create some level of data that helps them understand why you think it was worth knocking on their door. That's my particular philosophy. It's how I've approached it when I've worked with any municipality.
Trustee Farrington?
So did I understand you correctly that your analysis would be corridor approach, not just the town of Superior?
There are certain levels of retail that are going to expand beyond your town boundaries, and
right.
So you have. When you talk about super regional retail, you live in the shadow of Flatirons.
Right.
So when we talk about super regional retailers, you have to do it in the context of what the trade area is for that type of retail.
Right.
And some of the retail that we're going to look at exceeds beyond the boundaries of Superior. It doesn't mean that Superior isn't the right place to locate it. It just means that the trade area extends well beyond the boundaries of your town.
Right. Well, in fact, I think that's a key advantage we have. We are, to me, somewhat strategically positioned between Boulder and North Denver,
Right.
Louisville, Broomfield, et cetera, and taking advantage of that positioning certainly is something I want to investigate.
Right.
So actually what I was going to get a little bit more in depth of what I was trying to get at is, does some kind of major change or growth have to occur in this particular area, such as ConocoPhillips or our town center or something like that, or a big development nearby, for any impact to occur?
Don't know the answer to that, but that's one of the things we're going to find out. I happen to work with one municipality who would have had to quadruple the size of their community in order to attain the level of retail that they were hoping to attain. That was useful information because that was not an achievable result. So that's one of the things that we're going to take a look at is really what is the trade area for this area based on the different, because it's different by genre of retail. And how, what are the, what is the availability of that? How accessible is that trade area to the shopping patterns? And then how does that relate in terms of whether we need to see future growth or not? Or is there enough here to sustain what it is you're hoping to achieve?
Thank you. With that, I'd like to entertain a public comment. Any chamber comment?
Heather Craycraft, Superior Chamber of Commerce. And I just wanted to let you know that after spending time with Katie, I think she's the perfect complement to what has been set into place with the other consultants you have hired for your other projects. I think she will move steadily fast. She's, from the short time I spent with her, very direct and a perfect complement to everything that personally the Chamber's doing. I think to answer one of your questions, Trustee Hansen, is about those smaller retailers. I think between Katie and myself, we can definitely tag team on that. That's something that I believe, because they're a smaller business owner, maybe that's where the Chamber definitely comes in and takes that lead with her guidance, because believe me, I'm looking forward to learning from her as much as we already have tonight. So thank you.
Great.
Good to hear that you're going to be a part of this process.
Trustee Harrington?
So I'm moving on to the non-sort of interview part of this process. Are we ready for that? Can we move there? Or?
Yeah, what are you?
Well, where I'm going with it is my concern, I'm not seeing immediate time sensitivity to making this decision tonight. So I'll allow Matt to correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, it's already July,
Right.
and I'd like for Katie to get started as soon as
Right.
possible. So
Yeah.
the longer we delay,
Yeah.
the longer.
Right. My problem in making the decision tonight, one, I'm seeing this along the lines of how the mayor described, to where this is going to be the start of a process and relationship and whatnot. So whether or not it starts July 9th or the 24th, to me is less important than having full board buy-in, because this is a new initiative for the town and a much discussed initiative with people on a lot of different sides of this issue. And I'm a little concerned about having 3 trustees missing tonight. And
Well,
I'm just sort of wondering
Yeah, I
if it
understand
wouldn't be
that.
better process to.
My response to that would be, the board provided direction to us to go down this path in April, the full board, to do an RFP and make a selection. I understand there's only 4 here tonight, but I think there is board support for hiring,
Correct.
and it's staff's strong recommendation to go with Katie.
Right.
And her-
Have you gotten any feedback from the missing trustees?
So my comments are, well, a question for staff. So do you feel confident that you're going to get a deliverable, that you'll have an action plan from that will lead the town into the future?
I am.
Okay. So as people are well aware that, I'm very skeptical about economic development issues. I'm a free marketer, and then if it makes sense for our business to come to the town, that they will make that business decision, they'll make money. I'm tremendously impressed by the questions that were answered tonight. So I'm willing to step into that venture, understanding that this is probably a 18-month venture that we will talk about in January 1. So
So this is something that we might decide to, if whoever we hire, bring on for another 6 months into next year.
I can't see how the action plan,
Yeah.
Yeah.
if we're really wanting to target retailers, it's not like November, hey, Best Buy, do you want to come? No? Okay. Well, this is something that is a probably multi-year project, but
I would also say, I think the town's at a competitive disadvantage because every one of our surrounding municipalities has either a full-time economic development person or some company that provides consulting services.
and see what it got them.
Wow.
How you look at that.
Yeah, we can debate that one all night for the rest of the evening. Matt, if I might maybe eliminate a little part of my full board buy-in. KP has a distinctive approach to the problem at hand, and Puma had a distinctive approach, and I assume Centro had a distinctive approach. And I happen to think you were quite impressive in the answering of the questions, and I appreciate the frankness, directness, and the experience. But I want to make sure that we are speaking for the full board in buying into this particular approach.
Well,
So,
I would respond to say that the board packet goes out to all the board members. They have a chance to review it prior to the meeting.
Right.
And actually had received comments from Trustee Sorelli on another topic prior to tonight, but no comments from any of the three on this specific topic.
Okay, if there aren't other comments, I'll entertain some direction. Anybody?
A motion on the resolution?
That would be one way, yes.
What number is it? I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number R-50, Town of Superior Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a professional services agreement with KP Consulting and Associates for economic development consulting services.
Motion by Trustee Hansen, is there a second? Trustee Williams, any further discussion?
I just would like to make a comment that I understand Trustee Pennington's perspective on this as far as that the entire board is not here. However, we have been discussing this for over a year, maybe 2, year and a half, that we are really truly missing an economic development piece for our town that I really prefer not to wait for the entire board. It's unfortunate they were not here. However, I think this is the perfect timing and opportunity to employ a consultant when we're working on the town center PD and the comprehensive plan, as well as Brixmore being a new developer releaser from the Superior Marketplace. So I think that you put all these pieces together, and I think that we should be jumping on that now and not waiting. So I will be voting for this.
Okay, thanks. With that, Phyllis?
Williams?
Yes.
Pennington?
yes.
Uncle?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. That carries. This brings us to the end of the meeting. Is there anything else to come before the board tonight? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Some